The warning. Dr. Elena Santos stared at the readout on her quantum telescope's display, her coffee growing cold beside her workstation at the SETI Institute's new lunar observatory. The signal pattern pulsing across her screen defied everything she knew about natural cosmic phenomena. After 15 years of searching the stars for signs of intelligent life, she'd finally found something that couldn't be explained away as a pulsar or quantum fluctuation. "Dr. Chen, you need to see this," she called to her colleague, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The pattern wasn't random. It carried the unmistakable signature of artificial origin, a mathematical sequence so precise it could only have been created by an advanced civilization. Dr. Wei Chen crossed the observatory's monitoring room, his usual skepticism evident in his furrowed brow. But as he studied the data streaming across Elena's screen, his expression shifted from doubt to astonishment. "This is impossible," he whispered, adjusting his glasses. "The signal's coming from the Sagittarius arm, but it's being transmitted through quantum entanglement." Elena nodded, her dark eyes reflecting the blue glow of the displays. "Whoever sent this is at least 1,000 years ahead of us technologically, and they're broadcasting on every quantum frequency we can detect. They want to make absolutely certain their message is received." Within hours, every major observatory on Earth and Luna confirmed the signal. The United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session as the world's best quantum physicists and linguists worked to decode the message. What they discovered sent shockwaves through human civilization. The message came from a species called the Verixi, crystalline beings who had achieved spacefaring capability when humans were still learning to make fire. They warned of an approaching cosmic anomaly, a cascade of quantum disruptions that would tear through multiple star systems, destroying dozens of civilizations. The Verixi's advanced sensors had detected it, but even with their technology, they couldn't stop it alone. "We have petitioned the Galactic Council," the translated message continued. 17 advanced civilizations have the capability to help prevent this catastrophe. All have refused, citing the risk to their own species and the astronomical cost in resources. We now turn to the younger races, knowing this may be futile, but driven by our obligation to try every possibility before accepting extinction. Elena sat in the United Nations chamber 3 days later, representing the scientific community alongside delegates from every nation on Earth. The tension in the room was palpable as holographic projections showed the projected path of the quantum cascade. Earth wasn't in immediate danger. The anomaly would take centuries to reach them. But the Verixi and 11 other species would be destroyed within 5 years if nothing was done. "Let us be realistic," the Russian delegate said, breaking the tense silence. "We barely understand quantum physics compared to these beings. If 17 advanced civilizations cannot help, what could we possibly offer?" Elena stood, her voice clear and passionate. "With respect, that's exactly why we should try. Those 17 civilizations have forgotten something we humans know in our bones. Impossible is just a word. Every major achievement in human history started with someone trying what everyone else said couldn't be done." She gestured to the holographic display showing the quantum cascade's destructive pattern. "Look at this data. The other species are thinking like advanced civilizations, trying to stop or deflect the anomaly with brute force. But what if there's another way? What if our primitive understanding lets us see solutions they've become too advanced to consider?" The chamber erupted in debate. Nations argued about resources, about risk, about humanity's place in the galactic community. But as the discussion continued, a striking pattern emerged. Country after country, regardless of their differences, began to side with the same fundamental human truth. When lives were at stake, you had to try. The Chinese delegate's words captured the growing consensus. Throughout our history, humans have faced disasters where the odds seemed impossible. But we have always found that our greatest strength lies not in our technology, but in our refusal to accept defeat when lives hang in the balance. As the final vote was tallied, humanity had made its decision. Earth would attempt what 17 elder races had deemed impossible. They would try to save the Virixi and the other endangered civilizations, not because they knew they could succeed, but because they knew they had to try. The Chinese delegates' words captured the growing consensus. Throughout our history, humans have faced disasters where the odds seemed impossible, but we have always found that our greatest strength lies not in our technology, but in our refusal to accept defeat when lives hang in the balance. As the final vote was tallied, humanity had made its decision. Earth would attempt what 17 elder races had deemed impossible. They would try to save the Virixi and the other endangered civilizations, not because they knew they could succeed, but because they knew they had to try. Delina left the UN chamber that evening and looked up at the stars, now knowing they held both terrible danger and beings who needed help. Humanity was about to attempt its greatest rescue mission, not with superior technology or advanced knowledge, but with the one thing that had always defined their species, the unshakable determination to help others, no matter the odds. The Virixi's response to Earth's acceptance was telling. Their quantum transmission contained not just gratitude, but confusion. "We do not understand," they wrote. "Your species has neither the technology nor the experience for such an undertaking. Why would you accept this burden?" The UN's reply was simple: because that's what humans do. Rising to the challenge. The first challenge wasn't scientific, it was bureaucratic. 2 weeks after humanity's decision to help the Virixi, representatives from 194 nations gathered in Geneva to face an unprecedented question. How does a planet that can barely agree on trade policies coordinate to save alien civilizations? Dr. Elena Santos watched the proceedings from her new office at the hastily assembled Quantum Defense Initiative headquarters in Switzerland. The typical political posturing lasted exactly 3 minutes before Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Japan's leading quantum physicist, stood up and displayed a hologram that silenced the room. "This is the quantum cascade's progression," she said, pointing to a web of crimson lines spreading through a star map. "We have 4 years, 2 months, and 17 days before it reaches the first inhabited system. We can debate protocols later. Right now, we need ideas." The transformation that followed would be studied by historians for centuries. Nations that had been rivals for generations began pooling resources. China offered its quantum computing facilities. India opened its AI research centers. The United States shared classified propulsion technology. Russia contributed its advanced materials science. But the most remarkable contributions came from unexpected places. A teenage programmer from Kenya developed an algorithm that helped predict quantum fluctuations. A high school physics teacher in Brazil spotted a pattern in the Virixi data that everyone else had missed. A retired engineer in Vietnam proposed a modification to conventional shields that could theoretically withstand quantum distortion. Elena found herself working with Dr. Chen and a global team of scientists, trying to understand why the quantum cascade behaved the way it did. "It's like watching a river flow uphill," she muttered one night, staring at simulations until her eyes burned. "It's not just breaking physics, it's breaking it in a specific way." That's when Dr. Adebayo Okafor, a theoretical physicist from Nigeria, made the breakthrough. He wasn't looking at the quantum cascade as a natural phenomenon, but as a wave pattern similar to sound. "Look here," he said, pointing to his calculations. "It's not random destruction, it's resonance." The quantum cascade wasn't just destroying matter. It was making reality itself vibrate at frequencies that tore space-time apart. This understanding changed everything. You couldn't stop a tsunami, but you could dampen its waves. You couldn't halt an earthquake, but you could reduce its vibrations. Humanity began building something no advanced civilization had considered: quantum dampeners, not to stop the cascade, but to change its harmonic frequency. The design was a fusion of Earth's varied scientific traditions: Western quantum mechanics, Eastern wave theory, African rhythmic mathematics, and indigenous understanding of natural harmonics. The Virixi were puzzled by the approach. "Your solution seems primitive," they transmitted. How can such basic technology affect quantum-level events? Elena crafted the response herself. Sometimes the simplest solutions work best. You don't need a supercomputer to understand that if something's vibrating destructively, you can change its rhythm. Construction began simultaneously across Earth. Every nation contributed what they could. Small countries offered raw materials. Islands provided testing sites. Landlocked nations coordinated logistics. For the first time in human history, every country had a vital role in a single project. The work was far from smooth. There were accidents, setbacks, and moments of doubt. A test facility in the Sahara Desert was destroyed when a quantum dampener prototype malfunction created a temporary time dilation field. 3 scientists were injured during an experiment in Antarctica when they got too close to a resonance wave. But each failure taught them something new. Each setback led to improvements. The Virixi and other advanced races had approached the problem assuming they needed to overwhelm it with power. Humanity's approach was different. They would redirect the energy, work with it rather than against it. 4 months into the project, Dr. Chen made another discovery. The quantum dampeners weren't just affecting the cascade's frequency, they were creating a new kind of quantum field, one that could potentially be used for faster-than-light travel. It was an accidental breakthrough that none of the advanced civilizations had achieved, precisely because they'd never tried such a primitive approach. We're going to need ships, Elena told the UN Council, not just to deploy the dampeners, but to evacuate populations if our primary plan fails. And thanks to Dr. Chen's discovery, we can build them in time. The council chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. Building a space fleet capable of interstellar travel in less than 4 years seemed impossible. But then again, everything about this project had seemed impossible at first. A voice rose from the back of the chamber. It was Ambassador Patel from India, and she was smiling. My grandmother used to say that the difference between impossible and possible is often just the number of people working together to make it happen. We are 8 billion strong. Let's build those ships. As Elena looked around the room, she saw the same expression on every face. Determination mixed with hope. Humanity wasn't just rising to the challenge. They were transforming it into an opportunity. They would save the Virixi or exhaust themselves trying, and in the process, they might just revolutionize their understanding of the universe. The quantum dampener facility in Switzerland hummed with energy as another successful test concluded. Humanity's response to an impossible challenge was taking shape, one breakthrough at a time. They had much more work to do, but for the first time, Elena allowed herself to believe they might actually succeed. The Quantum Symphony. 3 months into the quantum dampener project, humanity faced its first major crisis. The prototype dampener in Australia suddenly failed, creating a localized quantum distortion that threatened to tear apart the facility. As emergency protocols activated and scientists evacuated, Dr. Maya Patel stayed behind, convinced she could stabilize the reaction. "Maya, get out of there," Elena shouted through the comm system. But Maya kept working, her fingers flying over the control panel as reality itself warped around her. The readings made no sense. The quantum field was doing something they'd never seen before. "It's not failing," Maya transmitted, her voice eerily calm despite the chaos. "It's singing." The quantum distortion wasn't destroying the dampener. It was resonating with it, creating a harmonic pattern that their instruments had misinterpreted as catastrophic failure. Maya's background in classical Indian music had let her recognize something everyone else had missed. The quantum cascade responded to harmony. This discovery revolutionized their approach. They stopped trying to fight the cascade's quantum frequencies and started trying to harmonize with them. The Virixi were baffled by this concept until Dr. Chen explained it using their own crystalline nature as an example. "Your bodies vibrate at specific frequencies to share information," he told their alien allies through the quantum link. "We're going to make the cascade vibrate with us instead of against us." The next phase of construction incorporated this new understanding. Quantum dampeners were redesigned to work in concert, creating overlapping fields that could guide and redirect the cascade's energy. Engineers started calling it the quantum symphony, and the name stuck. But they needed more than just technology. The dampeners required precise calibration across vast distances, coordination that seemed impossible given the time they had. That's when Captain Sarah O'Connor, a former orchestra conductor turned Space Force officer, proposed something radical. "We're thinking about this wrong," she told the project leaders. "We don't need computers to coordinate the dampeners. We need musicians." Her suggestion seemed absurd at first, but the more they tested it, the more sense it made. Human musicians could instinctively adjust to changes in rhythm and harmony in ways that computers couldn't match. They began recruiting musicians alongside physicists, creating teams that could tune the dampeners by ear as much as by numbers. The Virixi transmitted their confusion. How can organic beings possibly coordinate quantum harmonics more effectively than our advanced AI systems? Alina's response was simple, because music isn't about perfection. It's about feeling the rhythm and adapting to it. Sometimes the most beautiful symphonies come from improvisation. As the project progressed, they discovered something extraordinary. The quantum harmonics weren't just deflecting the cascade, they were creating new patterns in space-time itself. Dr. Adebayo's team detected the formation of stable quantum corridors, pathways through space that could revolutionize interstellar travel. "It's like we're not just playing music," Maya explained during a briefing. "We're teaching the universe to dance with us." The breakthrough attracted attention from the 17 advanced civilizations that had refused to help. They sent observers, barely concealing their skepticism behind diplomatic politeness. But as they watched humans literally conducting quantum fields like orchestra sections, their doubt began to turn to wonder. The Arcturians, a species that had achieved spaceflight before Earth had electricity, were the first to admit they'd been wrong. "We sought to impose our will upon quantum mechanics," their representative acknowledged. "You chose to listen to it instead." But time was running short. The cascade was accelerating, its destructive harmonics threatening to overwhelm several star systems ahead of schedule. They needed to deploy the dampeners soon, which meant testing their new quantum corridor technology. The first test flights were unmanned, sending probes through the corridors. Most returned with valuable data. Some didn't return at all. When it came time to test with a human crew, volunteers flooded in from every nation on Earth. Alina found herself in the selection committee, reviewing applications from people willing to risk their lives testing unproven technology. "Why do you want to do this?" she asked one candidate, a young pilot from Brazil. "Because somewhere out there, children are afraid their world is about to end," the pilot replied. "If there's even a chance we can save them, we have to try." The first manned flight through a quantum corridor was scheduled for the following week. As Alina watched the final preparations, she thought about how far they'd come. Humanity had taken an impossible problem and turned it into an opportunity not just to save lives, but to fundamentally change how they understood the universe. A transmission from the Virixi arrived, their crystalline language now familiar enough that it didn't need translation. "We still do not fully understand why you help us, but we are beginning to understand who you are." As the quantum symphony played its strange music across space-time, humanity prepared for its greatest test. They had learned to make the universe sing. Now they had to turn that song into salvation. The first wave. The quantum corridor stretched before the U.S. Harmony like a river of light. Captain Sarah O'Connor sat in the command chair, her musician's hand steady on the neural interface controls. Behind her, 20 of Earth's best quantum physicists and engineers monitored systems that shouldn't have been possible to build, let alone operate. "Quantum harmonics stable," Maya reported from her station. "Corridor resonance matching simulations." She paused, then added softly, "It's beautiful." The ship itself was a testament to human adaptation. Built in under a year using technology they'd barely understood months ago, it combined the quantum dampener's harmonic principles with conventional spaceflight systems. The result was unlike anything humanity or their alien allies had seen before. Remember, Alina's voice came through the quantum comm from Earth. The corridor isn't just a path, it's a song. Feel its rhythm. Sarah nodded, though Alina couldn't see her. As both a starship captain and former conductor, she understood better than most. The quantum corridors weren't just tunnels through space-time. They were moving harmonies that required a conductor's touch to navigate. Beginning corridor entry, Sarah announced. All sections, prepare for quantum transition. The harmony's engines hummed in perfect resonance with the corridor's quantum frequency. As they crossed the threshold, reality itself seemed to blur. Colors that shouldn't exist painted the bridge windows. Sound became light, light became mathematics, and mathematics became music. Then everything went wrong. Quantum cascade approaching. Dr. Chen's voice cut through the chaos. It's ahead of projected schedule. The corridor is intersecting with the leading edge. The ship shuddered as two quantum frequencies collided. Warning alarms blared as reality itself threatened to tear apart around them. The advanced materials of the hull groaned under forces they were never designed to withstand. Harmonics failing, Maya reported, her fingers dancing across her console. We're losing the corridor's resonance pattern. Standard procedure would have been to retreat, to cut their losses and try again later. But there was no later. The cascade's acceleration meant they had one chance to prove their solution could work. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the ship's vibrations through her neural interface. In that moment, she didn't see quantum mechanics or spatial coordinates. She saw chic music, felt rhythms, heard harmonies. All power to the primary dampener, she ordered. Maya, sync your station with my neural feed. We're going to conduct this manually. Manually. Someone gasped. That's impossible. Impossible is just what hasn't been done yet, Sarah replied, her voice steady. Maya, on my mark, begin quantum harmonic sequence Alpha 7. What happened next would be studied by physicists and musicians alike for generations, using nothing but human intuition and their understanding of harmony. Sarah and Maya began to play the quantum dampeners like instruments in an orchestra. They weren't fighting the cascade's discord. They were incorporating it into their symphony. The ship's sensors recorded everything as the impossible unfolded. Where the cascade's destructive frequencies met their harmonics, new patterns emerged. The quantum corridor didn't collapse. It transformed, creating a stable pathway through the very phenomenon they'd come to stop. It's working, Dr. Chen exclaimed. The cascade isn't just being deflected. It's being reformed at the quantum level. Through the quantum comm, they could hear the Verixi's astonishment. Their crystalline bodies resonated with frequencies they'd never imagined possible. Other alien species watching the mission were broadcasting their disbelief across all channels. But Sarah and Maya weren't paying attention to their audience. They were lost in the quantum symphony, conducting energy fields like orchestra sections, turning scientific impossibility into musical reality. The harmony pushed deeper into the cascade, its dampeners singing in harmony with the very forces that threatened to destroy civilizations. When they finally emerged from the quantum corridor, they had proof their solution could work. The cascade wasn't unstoppable. It could be guided, reformed, its destructive energy transformed into something sustainable. Send the data to Earth, Sarah ordered, her hands finally leaving the neural controls. And get me a secure channel to the Verixi. They need to know their people aren't going to die. As the crew celebrated their breakthrough, Maya approached her captain. How did you know it would work? She asked. The harmonics were completely unpredictable. Sarah smiled, remembering something her first music teacher had told her. Music isn't about predicting every note. It's about feeling the rhythm and knowing when to improvise. The quantum comm lit up with transmissions from Earth, from the Verixi, from alien species that had dismissed humanity as primitive just months ago. They all wanted to know how humans had succeeded where advanced civilizations had failed. Alina's response to their questions became famous throughout known space. We succeeded because we didn't know we couldn't. Sometimes the greatest dreams are achieved by those who haven't been taught their dreams are impossible. The Harmony's mission had proved more than just the viability of their solution. It had proved that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or power. It was their ability to see music in mathematics, to find harmony in chaos, and to dare to improvise when the universe itself seemed to be coming apart. Legacy of Hope. 5 years after the quantum cascade crisis, Alina stood in the newly constructed Galactic Assembly on Mars, watching representatives from 30 different species file into the chamber. The Virixi delegation caught her eye, their crystalline bodies refracting light in patterns that she now knew expressed joy and gratitude. The chamber itself was a testament to how much had changed. Built using a combination of human intuition and alien technology, its quantum harmonic architecture allowed species from vastly different environments to communicate naturally. The very walls resonated with frequencies that translated thoughts and emotions across biological barriers. "I still remember when they called our solution primitive," Dr. Chen whispered beside her, a slight smile on his face. He'd aged in the past 5 years, his hair now streaked with gray, but his eyes still held the same curiosity that had helped save civilizations. The quantum dampener network was now fully operational, transforming the once destructive cascade into a source of sustainable energy that powered faster than light travel throughout known space. What had started as a desperate rescue mission had evolved into a revolution in how species interacted with quantum mechanics itself. The Arcturian speaker rose to address the assembly, their bioluminescent form pulsing with formal patterns. 5 years ago, we committed an error that nearly led to the extinction of multiple civilizations. We assumed that advancement meant knowing what was impossible. Humanity taught us that true wisdom lies in asking what if instead of saying it cannot be done. Maya, now head of the Quantum Harmony Institute, took the podium next. The interface she wore allowed her to conduct the chamber's quantum field, creating a visual demonstration of how human music had transformed their understanding of physics. As she moved her hands, the air itself seemed to dance with possibilities. The quantum symphony wasn't just about saving lives, she explained. It was about learning to listen to the universe in a new way. Every problem is an invitation to try something different, to find harmony where others see only discord. The changes went far beyond technology. Humanity's approach to the crisis had sparked a cultural revolution among spacefaring species. The Virixi had incorporated music into their crystalline architecture. The Zentari, once purely logical beings, had established arts academies. Even the most advanced civilizations had begun questioning their assumptions about progress and possibility. But it wasn't all celebration. The memorial wall outside the chamber bore the names of those who had given their lives during the mission. Quantum corridor pioneers, dampener technicians, and crew members who had risked everything to save species they'd never met. Their sacrifice had taught the galaxy something else about humanity, their willingness to die for what they believed in. A young Virixi approached Alina after the ceremony, its crystalline form vibrating with the equivalent of a whisper. "My generation exists because your species refused to accept impossibility. How do we repay such a debt?" Alina thought about all the nights spent working on seemingly unsolvable problems, the moments of doubt, the breakthroughs that came from the most unexpected places. "Live," she said simply. "Create. Dream. And when someone tells you something's impossible, remember this moment." The Galactic Assembly's final act that day was to establish the humanity principle, a recognition that technological advancement alone did not define a civilization's potential to contribute to the galaxy. The youngest species often saw possibilities that the eldest had forgotten to imagine. As the assembly concluded, Sarah O'Connor, now Admiral of Earth's growing quantum fleet, stood with Alina watching the sunset paint Mars' sky in shades of red and gold. The quantum corridors visible from orbit shimmered like rivers of light, carrying ships and ideas between stars that once seemed impossibly distant. "Did you ever imagine this?" Sarah asked, gesturing at the transformed solar system around them. "When you first received that distress signal?" Alina smiled, remembering that night in the observatory that seemed like a lifetime ago. "No," she admitted. "But that's the point, isn't it? The most beautiful futures are the ones we can't imagine until we dare to make them real." Across known space, the quantum symphony played on. The music of reality itself had been transformed from a song of destruction into one of connection and possibility. And at its heart was the simple truth that had saved civilizations. Sometimes the most advanced thing you can do is refuse to believe in impossible things. The Verixai had archived the entire story in their crystalline records, ensuring that future generations would remember. Not just the science or the technology, but the moment when humanity stood up and said yes when every other species said no. They preserved the names, the failures, the breakthroughs, and most importantly, the lesson. The universe's greatest mysteries aren't solved by knowing all the answers. They're solved by being willing to ask new questions, by finding harmony in chaos, and by remembering that impossible is just another word for something that hasn't been done yet.